You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
From kitchen chaos to well-oiled machines, get ready for newfangled technology and old-school know-how. Stories and a good bit of fun. I'm Simon, and this is Culinary Mechanic.
Yeah, sure. How I got started. Well, I grew up in the five boroughs in New York. Grew up in the Bronx, and then midway through high school, my dad moved us out to Long Island in the suburbs. And I wasn't a good student, let's say, and I had the option of doing half the day at vocational school, half the day in high school. So in vocational, I ended up taking culinary arts or commercial foods, it was called at the time. And that was my junior year in high school. And I always had a thing for cooking, I guess, subconsciously in my brain. And then getting into a professional environment, you know, with school and like industrial equipment and, broilers and huge fryers, at home, we didn't have that stuff. And from there, that it just, really, I connected with it. And that's kind of the short of the long. My two instructors there, though, one just recently passed away, John Murphy, rest his soul. He was a big part of it, and also this guy, Paul Magro, two instructors that, gave it the real back in high school. And these guys knew how to pull out any potential that was within someone to, be a part of this industry and continue to move on with it.
Yeah. I want to hear more about that, but I have a question for you. So,
Yep.
like how I'm a big fan and like pulling out the things that people can't see. So how has that, like, fast forward all the way to 2025? How does that affect how you work with your younger chefs, how you work with your chefs across the company? I mean, how is that how does that affect how did that affect you, or how does that affect how you
Yeah,
manage and lead?
I guess, I think it's kind of easy, but it's not. It's fortunate enough, not many chefs are able to get trained, to by a young age. I was 16, and,
Right.
and getting taught. And what I learned from them that I use in my career is patience. Um, they have a bunch of students from all sorts of life, and everyone had their issues or strengths, right? And
Yeah.
just watching them and how they dealt with each individual was pretty impressive. At the time, you don't really notice it until you get older and you look back and you're like, man, there was some tough days they had to deal with, and they're professionals and just kept everyone calm, cool, and collective.
Awesome. You said one of my favorite phrases in the whole wide world, just calm, cool, and collected.
Oh yeah,
I was just I got to teach a course this morning. It was the fourth of a four-part, and it was uh entry level culinary people who were trying to get jobs in big convention centers through a labor union, and the labor union is actually paying them to learn. And it was one of the, like, calm
that's
under
nice.
pressure was the yeah, it was kind of neat, actually. Folks who, you could tell that there was definitely some folks who'd been through the ringer and were trying to put their life back together, or had been struggling to find work. And this local labor union up here in Seattle, they're just trying to find different ways to go about it, and it was really neat. It was special to be a part of. They brought in resume people, to help them with their resume. They took them into the kitchens and did some basic culinary, but I got to talk to them about how to be how to be a valuable team member, and it was like calm under pressure. And I think the phrase I use more often than not is eye of the hurricane. Like, I want to stand in that eye and I want to be calm. And it's okay if other people are freaking out, but, like, I'm gonna be calm.
Yeah.
So,
Oh yeah.
So
I mean,
calm, cool, and collected
the
matters.
captain loses the control of the ship, everyone's gonna freak out.
Yeah. And I think teaching cooks that same thing, like
Hmm.
lead yourself. Lead yourself. And be calm while your compatriots are kind of losing their stuff. It's quite amazing to see what happens when people can find their center and really stay calm. So
Oh yeah.
all right, so you get in, you have what sounds to be like some incredible early mentors. Like what give us the highlight reel of like the formative experiences. Like what are those things that
Yeah.
really kept you moving?
Again, I got lucky in high school, ended up working at, a particular place. I remember I was still, 16, 17. I got to work for a certified master chef,
Nice.
a real, certified, a master. Um, he was from Scotland originally, worked in UK, and it was European style what he was teaching us, and learning from a true master, the fundamentals of cooking was taught, and that's what kind of built the foundation. Like really professional kitchen environments set the level of excellence, and like really knowing what's a stock, what's a demi, what's
Right.
basics of cooking, but done proper, I would say. And he wouldn't let anything go. I remember mincing shallots. It was my first week, and it's a country club, and we had two clubs, a beach club and a main club. And I'm at the beach club. He's like, "You got to mince 9 pan of shallots." I'm about 3/4 of the way done, and he comes in the kitchen, dumps it on the board, spreads it out, says they're no good, and he throws them in the trash. I rem- I remember just tearing up, but I didn't want to cry in front of him. So as soon as he left, I went in to walk in. I bawled my eyes out. I was like, "What did I do?" Um, and I redid it again, and he came back, and he was like, "All right." And I think he did it out of spite, but you know, it did teach a lesson. I, didn't take anything for granted after that.
No, I think I'm not gonna say anymore that we've all had that experience because I feel like a lot of youngsters haven't been a part of that. I know I had a chef who was something very similar, and it's like start over. Like, what are you
Yeah.
talking about? We're like 20 minutes from service. He's like, I don't give a damn. Figure it out.
Yeah.
You know, I know that I was running a place up here in Seattle, and I I had one of those moments where like we had succotash and we did it in 35-pound batches. It was usually like a two-person process.
Hmm.
And I had a day and I was like, no, this is going away. Like I don't have to throw it away, but I am not serving it. And my general manager is looking at me like I'm crazy. And I was like, if we don't set a standard, if we don't believe in the standard right here and right now, and we were probably only, I don't know, 2 weeks into a brand new restaurant. I was like, if we don't set a standard, like it's all downhill from here.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right.
One thing
And
slips by, then the next thing slips by, and
mhm.
it's
And
very hard to get it
then you're
back.
average,
Yeah.
right? Then you're just like, and we were in a pretty competitive area of Seattle where it's like you got the tourism, but like we're the company I was working for was aiming for something better than the average tourist restaurant, you
Hmm.
know. And for me, like the fact that you remember that story, right? Remember
Oh
you
yeah.
remember that moment, it hits you deep down. Uh I visited that restaurant a few years later, and this kid, I'm literally sitting at the bar just having a beer, and this kid comes up and he goes, "Excuse me," and I said, "What's up?" And he goes, "You're Chef Simon, right?" And I said, "I am." He goes, "I thought so, and I've heard stories about you." And I was like, "Okay, I
Oh,
think this is a good progression in the world."
whenever someone says that to me, "Oh, I've heard a lot about you," I go, "It's all speculation."
Yeah, for me, it's either that or I pay a lot of money for that, you know? All right, we got the chef, certified master chef.
Yep. I
Um,
end up going to CIA, Culinary Institute of America. And
nice.
then from there I had met an instructor who happened to be my first first kitchen with actual cooking, and he ended up being my teacher in my last class when I graduated. So while I was getting to the end, he asked if I wanted to go to Switzerland to go work, and I was like, hell yeah. It was tough though, because I had another opportunity. My buddy who was working at Charlie Trotta's offered for me to go work there with him, or he's like, there's a spot open. It was really hard back then to get in, and I ended up choosing to go to Switzerland. I was like, I'll never be able to go overseas again, and I did that for about a year. And same friend, who's Brian Ogden, Bradley Ogden's son, who opened up a restaurant, Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. They called me up in Switzerland to come back to the States, particularly Las Vegas, to help open the restaurant. And I was like, hell no, I'm not coming back. I was enjoying life out there and cooking.
Right.
So eventually they got me to come back, and we ended up opening up the restaurant, which was probably the best thing ever. It was a bunch of us who went to school together, opened the restaurant up, and we were able to get James Beard Best New Restaurant. We got a Michelin star. Fortunately, the restaurant closed after about, I want to say 6, 7 years, maybe 8 years. But by then we were all pretty much gone, and I wanted to leave the States again. I wanted to go back out of the country. I wanted to go to Vancouver, actually. And I ended up meeting my wife now at the time in Las Vegas. And I also said, if I'm going to stay in Vegas, I want to be a part of opening Joel Robuchon's restaurant, who was opening in Las Vegas. And I got lucky one night. The chef of the Mansion, which is a 32 villa, invite only kind of hotel within a hotel at MGM, came in for dinner. I cooked for him and we were talking. I said, I'm thinking about leaving, and the only way I would stay if I could connect with Robuchon chefs. He goes, oh, it's funny. They're cooking in my kitchen now doing recipe testing. So he introduced me to the chef. And then next thing you know, I ended up doing tasting, got the job, and that's what made me stay in Vegas. So we opened that up, was there for about a year and a half, then went over to the actual Mansion side. That chef had left, so I ended up taking his spot. So did 32 villas. It's kind of crazy. Probably one of the most intense kitchen. It is the most intense kitchen I ever worked in. Precision was beyond precision. Rulers, the stories you hear, and in European 3 stars was exactly what it was. I mean, you didn't have a ruler, you pretty much couldn't cut anything because they all had to be the same. Weights down to the gram. It was very, very precise, and it was intense. And then kind of there is what kept me in Vegas. I did a stint with Rick Moonen, seafood place. Then I went to, I decided to do hotel side because I've been doing restaurants. The Cosmopolitan in Las Vegas was opening up, and that food and beverage team I had worked with at Caesar's Palace from Bradley Ogden's, and they were looking for a CDC for the hotel, which was kind of a made up position. So I ended up doing that, but it also worked out because I was planning on having a child with my wife. We had been married now, and I was like, this would probably be the best time to have a kid while I'm in a hotel side, because I'm not opening and closing a restaurant every day.
Right.
So I was able to do that for a few years, and then I got the itch to make a move. I did, while I was at the Cosmopolitan, I was able to do a little Food Network show, and I only did it for the money, 10 grand for one day, and I was like, I'm in. Ended up doing Chopped on Food Network right before my daughter was born. And while I was there filming, she was due the month I was there, and I was afraid I was going to miss her birth.
Wow.
So I was really nervous, but it paid off. 10 grand went a long way back then.
Hell yeah.
to
Yeah, that's
help a
great.
newborn out. And then I got the itch to go back to restaurants, and my buddy Dave, who was the corporate chef for MINA Group at the time, we all went to school together again. And he's like, we got a spot. Originally, it was supposed to be Michael Mina, the flagship at Bellagio, and then it ended up being
Okay.
Strip Steak in Las Vegas Steakhouse. And at first, I didn't like it. I was like, a steakhouse. I'm like, no way. I'm like, absolutely not. And then I decided to do it, and probably the hardest job I've ever had, actually, with the union and just
Yeah.
fixing culture and you know getting systems back in place when they went let loose. Just like you were saying, you let something slip by. This had a lot of things slip by, for better or worse, but it was tough getting it back to where it should have been, as being part of a Michael Mina Group restaurant. And then from there, Chef Michael and I, we were talking. We've been in talks the whole time, and always talked about the future. Me personally, I was always looking ahead, and you know, my next step from there was to take over all the steakhouses because I was in one, and then one thing led to another. Then it led to uh, VP of Culinary, and then now fast forward to head of Culinary, which Michael and I, doing the whole thing, and then
Nice.
there are I have a West Coast chef director, East Coast director. I have a VP of new openings. So it's good structure now and system to really make sure, things go right.
Let's pause for a second. If you're serious about building a kitchen that leads from the top, runs on systems, and actually feels good to work in, make sure you're following Culinary Mechanic. This show is all about helping you lead better, scale smarter, and stop white knuckling your business. And if you're ready to dig in deeper, you'll find a link in the show notes to connect with me directly. That's awesome. So in all that, I guess I think that my listeners here on with Culinary Mechanic, I want to be able to provide some thoughts on how you gauge that career, right? So I love the fact that you're like, I'm looking towards the future. Did you ever see yourself as doing that head of culinary?
Um,
Or
Honestly, at the time, I wasn't thinking of that big of a position. But I do to this day. If you talk to Chef Mina, to this day, he tells everyone, I am the absolute worst interview he's ever had in his career, but I'm the best hire he's ever hired.
I
Um,
think that's important.
I wasn't looking that far ahead. I was looking at actually regional. Like I was like, all right, I'll take over Vegas because we have a
Nice.
few restaurants in Vegas. I didn't think it would be, you know, multiple steaks houses. There was about 7 or 6 at the time, but in different states. So I'd had to travel quite a bit. Um, and then once I got into that, then it kind of was like, this could be a possibility. Um, my buddy was uh had the role at the time, and I knew he was looking to do his own thing and he was looking to leave. And I didn't say I wanted it, but it kind of just naturally happened, I guess. Um
Nice.
and one thing led to the next, and here it is.
Awesome. All right. So I'm all about kind of helping people understand a little bit more about systems and leadership. So how, tell us, I don't know, tell us sort of what would you say your leadership style is, but
Mhm.
beyond that, what are some of the systems, some of the bigger picture things that you've found that really have helped you maintain? Because we're talking about 30 plus restaurants here.
Yeah. My It's funny, everyone that knows me, and I go by G-Man, which is crazy. I've had that name forever. My style is I love to have fun. There's
Okay.
time to be serious and there's time to be precise. When it gets down to crunch time, it's you know, fun times over, but during prep, during setting up, I love to have a good time, and I want the team around me to feel comfortable. Because going back to the stories, being in kitchens that are just so strict, where you're afraid to say anything, or you're afraid to to say you got to go to the restroom and leave the kitchen, right? Th- Those days are over these days, I hope. But um, my team now, they all know me. When we get on meetings in Zoom, just like this, I'll have an agenda, but I also like to have I like them to speak what's on their mind, um, let it out, good, bad, worse, and then I will give my feedback on what they're thinking. And I'm a collaborative person. I love to collaborate. I'll give ideas, but I want to hear ideas come back as well, and I want them to feel like they have creativity, or they have a voice, or they're part of the team as well. If it was just me giving direction all the time, could be exhausting, but also, are you really growing them? And how do you know if you're growing them if you can't get feedback back from them, what they're thinking, or letting them pick an idea, and whether it's a dish, whether it's a new system, uh, you know, whether it's has to do with service, uh, I love to hear what they have to say, and if it's really good, then we'll roll with it. If it's not good, I'll say, well, maybe we should do it this way. I would never say it's a terrible idea, but I
Right.
would say maybe we wouldn't be able to do it because of this, but we could try to do something like this. So, uh, always giving them feedback and I'm not saying whatever I say is the best, but usually I get pretty close to what would be, the right, I guess, feedback for them, for what they're looking for. Um, and then, it's funny. In 2 weeks, I have an all chef meeting, which I do biannually. And so in
Okay.
August, all the restaurants, 38 restaurants, I'll have all the executive chefs on, and our corporate team. We have a team called Rex as well, which is our restaurant excellence team. And basically, it's you think about task force, it's kind of what it is, but yet we utilize it in a different way, where we hire chefs, whether it's an exec sous position, a sous chef, or an exec chef. And the goal is they help us, we help them, meaning we're doing openings. They'll help open restaurants with us. If there's a void in a restaurant that needs help, we'll send them there to help out. But there is an end goal where we train them, MINA Group system training. And our expectation, which they know, is they're to take over a restaurant or go into a restaurant. So if you're a number two, your goal is to become a number one. And if you're a number one with us, you're definitely uh, should be getting a restaurant from us, in the city. That typically we like to give a choice, but if it's a choice or not, if they don't want to go to Florida, um, usually we'll have a couple other options. But if not, they stay on Rex with us till something opens that they would like a city to live in. But usually it works out when we have these open positions. So something that we do is, we take that serious, where, we bring, and not a lot of restaurant groups do that at all. Usually they'll bring them in, use them
Right.
as mercenaries, basically, right? Help fix this, prep this, but they're not actually thinking of their future. Um, getting a number two to be a number one in a restaurant is huge. And to get that
Yeah.
training while you're on the road, it's invaluable. It's very hard to come by. Um, and then internally, we also have our online database called MINA Exchange, where we have tons of articles, curriculums, tests you can take, knowledge checks, our SOPs, all these things that create a restaurant, or our group. It's all in this database, and it's accessible to everyone, whether you're a dishwasher, hostess, barback, chef, anyone could go on there. and
That's
learn.
incredible.
It really is. And we host weekly meetings once a week that it's very structured. This meeting, there's no fun to say, but and it's because we're really trying to focus on building the next leaders. And we go
Right.
through top to bottom on how healthy their restaurant is, to how much of the SOP knowledge do they know and how much do their teams know, and where can we help them be successful. And literally every week we go through restaurants. We can't do all in one day, so we block off 7 or 8 at a time, week by week, but it's
Right.
every week.
Awesome. So let me ask you, I mean, talking about 38 restaurants, obviously there's probably more, I know from looking around that there's multiples of each concept. Do they all, like, if you're talking about bourbon steak or whatever, like, are they all running the same systems throughout, or is it
Yeah,
pick and choose from a variety kind of feel?
good question. To be honest, it's hard to do 100%.
Right.
Because if we're not physically there to do it with them, who are the actual, when you're the ones always looking at them. But yes, all of our restaurants use our systems. Um, there's partnerships with certain, like, Four Seasons has their stuff that they have to do as well. But when it comes to within the restaurant, it's MINA Group systems. And the one system that we don't veer from is our expediting system.
Okay.
So if you walk into any MINA Group restaurant, and our expediting system, you could immediately walk up to the board and know exactly where the restaurant is or what table, time their ticket or entree or app is coming without even having to ask anyone. And that's kind of,
Nice.
we say, the heartbeat of the restaurant.
Hell
And
yeah.
then from there, just, from our VIP SOPs to weighted guest SOPs to, we have an SOP for everything. And that's what helps build the next leaders, because we give them this knowledge and structure where it's a lot harder to do it organic. Um, and also when you teach them live, they can go back and read it, as I said, in that database to back it up.
Right.
So yeah, I would say our expediting system is what is very consistent, and our daily meetings we have within the restaurants is a standard, and we do weekly manager meetings where corporate gets on their call with them once a week, which is standard.
Right.
So they're usually about 90+%
Nice.
with our systems.
That's a far cry from a lot of things, man.
Oh yeah. I
I
mean, like,
mean,
it's hard to
go
do
ahead.
100, but we try to get close.
Right. I mean, clearly you've been through some pretty fairly diverse cultures. What do you think that really, I mean, obviously there's SOPs and I absolutely love that. But like, what do you think really stands out for you in the culture of Mina restaurants that kind of has really helped you guys stand out?
Yeah, our culture is I like to say collaboration. And I know we set most of the menus, but yet collaboration, not just menus. We I promote that. We promote we want our leaders to have an ownership mentality, put an owner's cap on. And with that, that means, not just your day-to-day responsibilities. It's, you own the restaurant. What are you going to do about your cleaning crew that, isn't cleaning right? Or what are you going to do about, uh, you know, the fryer's broken? How do you fix it if you don't have an engineering? But then there's things where you got a prep guy who wants to become a cook and get on the line. Chef, how are you going to make that happen? What are you going to do with your sous chefs? And we go into, there's all sorts of things that it's the collaboration and they come to us with ideas sometimes
Right.
that are better than what we could give them. And that's the best part, when we're
Oh, yeah.
making them think, we're pushing them to think better. And when they come back with these ideas and answers, that's what really makes it.
I think that's amazing. I think one of the things that I've become really fond of lately is giving people the information and the structure to make great decisions.
Hmm.
And just like you said, like I'm always shocked at like I'll have some ideas in mind when I'm coaching a chef or in a few years back when I was overseeing multiple restaurants, but it's always amazing to me when you give people the ability, like the sort of the decision making matrix, what
Yeah.
they're able to do that like can easily surpass what you've done because human nature.
Yep. And if the structure is there, if you got a great racetrack, now you could put whatever car you want on that track. You want a Ferrari on there, you want a Mercedes on there. You gave them the road. It's paved
Yeah,
beautifully. It's how fast they want to go now, and what style they want to, what kind of car they want to get in and take that ride.
yeah. Uh, it's funny. You talk to some younger chefs nowadays, and they use the word corporate like it's a bad thing, and you start talking about structure, and they're like, "Oh, I don't want that to hinder my creativity." And I'm like, "Man, you're looking at it all wrong."
It's very, very true. I've come across many interviews when I can sense that. Um, the first thing they ask is how much creativity you have on the menu. And it's like, well, we can get to that, but if you want the honest, it depends. It could be 30%, it could be 50%, it could be 10%. It all depends on where we feel you're at and if you know our systems and how the restaurant is operating while you're at the helm, yada, yada, yada. It's not just the menu.
Right.
We truly hold our chefs, particularly and GMs, accountable, for their specific areas, front and back of the house, and not just slicing and dicing and cooking. It's growing your team. If you're a chef there for 2 years, 3 years, how many cooks or chefs have you passed on to us to move on? Or
Yeah.
want to promote things that are important these days. Not saying running day to day is important, but the bigger picture is building the next group of leaders.
Yeah. Uh, I, it's always fascinating to me when people, you know, I think this happens through pop culture and media. Like the view of chef gets fairly narrow, and what they really are saying is cook, but everybody thinks chef, if
Hmm.
that makes sense.
Oh
And so
yeah.
I love it. I love it when I'm able to talk to people and start to explain to them. They're like, "Well, then what's the difference?" And it's like, man, if you're asking that question, you're in for a world of hurt because this is gonna like come heavy on the top of your head, you
Hmm.
know. But I love that conversation because it's like people are like oh, it's about the cooking. I'm like, cooking ends up being 20% on what we do, you
Yeah.
know? And even the creative aspects, right? Like for me, consistency is always going to be more important to me than creativity, right? Because
100%.
if you're not consistent, you don't get the opportunity and the privilege to create. There's just no two ways about it.
And that's a part where I think still some of the younger and inexperienced cooks or chefs. I'll never forget one of the things was told to me is the hardest thing in the business consistency, and they also said key to success is consistency. And when you have chefs that want to be creative, it's cool to change menus. I've done it week by week, day by day, but at some point uh, it's very hard to get your team and staff, I guess, well trained because it's just when it changes so much so fast, it's very hard to keep systems in place to allow them to like teach it to someone else if you weren't there.
Yeah.
And the machine would only run if you're there because you're the creative one. And now you got to watch them and show them. But then you change the menu a week later, a system, and now you're like, well, I showed you that, and you're like, and the cook's like, I don't really remember because it was, 2 weeks ago,
Yep.
it doesn't really stick. So it's something that uh, the work consistency is very powerful in this uh, in this industry.
Yeah.
The hardest thing to
Uh,
do.
I agree. It's funny. I was talking with a chef recently, and I said, "So, what do you most want to improve?" Right? Like you now have a coach, right? In me, yeah, now have an advisor with a lot of experience. What do you want to work on? Because I can look at your kitchen and probably find 5 to 10 things.
Mhm.
I said, "What do you want to work on?" And he said, "Consistency." And I said, how about if we worked on quality? What do you think about that? He's like, well, I think the quality is good. And I was like, so is good your measure of the top? And so we that kind of led us into a long conversation. But uh it's an interesting, I guess it's an interesting dialogue for me to go down that road and say, what are you going to push on? You're going to push on quality, or you're going to push on consistency? Because for me, I think if you push on quality every day and making sure that that's the best it can be and are consistent in your actions, consistency comes right along.
Hmm. Very true.
Um, but I love talking to people who understand like the value of consistency and the business aspect. Um, all right, I gotta ask, so like, what's your favorite part about this job? Because this is a pretty special thing that you got.
Yeah, for me, it's easy. I get that question asked a lot. I love the travel of, I love the traveling part, and particularly when I go into each operation is talking to the teams and meeting, the employees, because not being there's sometimes I wouldn't get to a restaurant in years. Um,
Right,
there's times when I'm in a restaurant probably twice a month. Um, so when I get to travel and get to talk to the teams and kind of usually the leaders, I bring them out, I take them outside of the restaurant and, get them out of the restaurant and kind of shoot the shit with them and, be normal, not all the bosses here, we got to play
right,
nice, we'll get a beer and just, I like to have them relax and, see what they've been doing, what's going on, what's the food scene around where they're at, kind of relevant to the industry, but not completely cut off. And to show that, you know, I'm around but not around, giving them
right.
support and the camaraderie of I'm here. I love taking both front and back, GM chef or exec sous and AGM, whatever. But I always like to do the combination of the two, having a front and a back. Um, and it shows well, one, it gives because we're not there every day to see what kind of relationships happening front and back, right?
Right.
But two, also to make sure like whatever I say in the back, the front knows, or the front, whatever I say in the front, the back knows. There's no, it's one team, one dream kind of mentality.
Awesome. Awesome. Um, I think for me, I love that kind of thing because it always reaffirms something that I've said for years, and that is cooks are cooks, man. Right? Like I just love it. Like when
Introverts, cooks are introverts usually, like, or they think
totally.
front, it, they all hate the front of the house, so the front hates the, and, you hear these stories, but it's so funny.
But it's so funny. It's so fun to see like different how like kitchens are kitchens, right? You just start to hear the stories, and I'm sure that you see it even more of having a large company, having been a part of a 7 unit company. It's like the human dynamic lessons to be learned, they repeat themselves.
Yeah, it's there's still I mean, you're always gonna have those, the few that are, that's just how they are and they'll never change. Um, they don't vocalize it, to say like poison the water, say, around them. But you can tell they keep it to themselves, or they'll say things under their breath, but nothing where like becomes an issue for us.
Well,
Or
that's
we
good.
actually, or sometimes we'll do, we'll do trainings within the restaurant front and back, and we'll purposely pick, those individuals and like pair them up with each other so they're like uncomfortable. But then after, a 30-minute seminar with us, they're like completely comfortable and best friends with the person they thought they hated.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to like we are more alike than we are different.
Yeah.
Right. Well, awesome. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming to play with me today, hanging out in
Yeah.
my little sandbox of the world.
Listen, I'm sorry I was late. I totally spaced out there, but I appreciate you having me on. It's always good to hear, actually having myself think back on the olden days.
Yeah.
Brings back great memories.
Yeah.
And
I mean, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I was gonna say I wouldn't change it for any. Everyone's like, what would you have done if you weren't doing what you're doing? And I always answer it pretty quick because I love magic. I'm like, oh, I would have been a magician. That's not, that's fantasy. It's not real to me, but I don't think I would enjoy doing anything else, doing what I
Yeah.
do or being in
I
an industry.
Yeah, I can't. I struggle. I struggle sometimes. People have asked me that question numerous times, and I struggle to think of what else I would have done. I mean, I dropped out of college to do this. I absolutely love
Yeah.
it. And then when I stopped working in the restaurants, people were like, "Do you think you should have quit earlier?" I was like, "No, I absolutely like. I loved it all the way up until I didn't." You know,
Yeah.
so I think if you're into a career or you're into a vocation of whatever style, like as long as
Yeah.
you're loving it and having fun, I mean, the fact that you list fun kind of on the top of the list is
It's
makes my heart beat
it's
just
got
a
to be
little extra
fun.
happy.
It's
Yeah,
got to be fun. I mean, if you ask anyone of me, I love to have a good time. I
yeah,
love to laugh. I love to make jokes. Because it's stressful. We work against
yeah,
the clock. Um, it's fast paced. You got to be focused, but when you don't have to be focused, that's when you got to let loose and just, have fun until you're ready to get serious.
yeah, absolutely. Well, Chef, once again, thank you so much for coming to play. And to all you out there, uh, thanks. Please continue to check it out, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you.
You've been listening to Culinary Mechanic. This show exists to help you lead with more clarity, build systems that actually work, and create a kitchen culture worth showing up for. If this episode helped you move even one step in that direction, do me a favor, leave a quick review. It helps more chefs and operators stop the chaos and start leading with intention.